Hello guys, my name is Gavin, and this will be a video on how to load multiple player accounts. So we're assuming in this case that we're going to have two different files with player info like player 1 and player 2, and we're going to dynamically load them inside the game by clicking on a different text object to represent the actual file name. Alright guys, I'm just going to get started. So to start off, you want to create a folder on your desktop by doing right click, new, and let's do folder like this, except I already got my folder open. And so inside your folder, let's do right click, new, and let's do text documents. This will be called player 1, like this. And I'll double click and I'll put, let's say, 43 in here, or just any random number. Hit file and save. Then right click, do new, and let's do text document again. And I'll name this as player 2. And for player 2, let's say he's a bit better, so let's do 443. And hit file and save. So we should see that if we open both documents up, they've each got their respected numbers or points or whatever. Okay, now that we got that, let's go inside the game engine, and double click the A button and hit X and delete. Hit 7 to go in the top view, and let's do spacebar and then add a camera. And let's drag this camera up and hit 0 to go into our camera view, and let's do spacebar and then add a text object like this. Add a text object. Okay. I'm gonna hit the I'm gonna go into edit mode or hit the tab key, and let's rename this as player 1 like this. Or actually, I'll just do 1 like this. Go back into object mode. Let's hit Shift and D to copy it. Drag this down. Hit the tab key, and let's put 2 like this. Go back into object mode. And in object mode, what we're going to do is do Alt and C and convert to mesh. Alt and C and convert to mesh. Okay, now that we have that, what we're going to do is rename these objects as their names respectively 1 and 2. 1 and 2 like this. And okay. Alright, now what we're going to do is go back into our game logic view. I'm going to hit 0 to go into our camera view and hit game right here. And actually, one thing I forgot to do is let's convert these 1 and 2 objects down here. Let's do collision bounds and let's do convex hull. So right click, click on the physics tab, collision bounds, and then convex hull. This just makes it easier when we're dealing with a mouse in this case. And okay. Actually, have I done that yet? No. One thing I forgot to mention, guys, is do file and save it into that folder right there. So I'll just do game, do save. Because if we're going to be using the method that I'm using, they all need to be in the same file, or the same folder. That's my mistake. Alright, what we're now going to do is add an always sensor on our camera. So right click on your camera. Let's add a mouse over sensor. Mouse over any. I'll name it as mouse over. And for the property, let's put icon. So let's right click on this one object and add the property icon. Right click on the 2 object and add the property icon. Right click back in your camera. And I'm going to minimize this. And let's add a mouse sensor. This mouse sensor will be named as click. I'm going to select tap right here. And I'm going to minimize this. And let's add a Python controller. And connect these like this. Okay. Now that we have that, what we're going to do is do text and create a text block. No, actually, let's do templates, Python, and then game logic simple. Okay. Delete the portion that I've highlighted. Okay. And what we are now going to do is let's import logic from the BGE. So from BGE, import logic. And actually, I'm going to cut this really quick. So cut those 2 lines, the controller and the owner ones, and paste them up here. Make sure this is at the beginning, because we're going to be using them for both functions. So your script for now should look like this. Okay, let's now define the path is going to be equal logic.expands path, like this. Alright, and let's now define the load function with file name like this. Okay, what we're now going to do is we're going to have it so that it's going to load whatever file that we input here. So if we call the load function, it's going to need a file name. So what we're going to do is do open is going to equal, actually file is going to equal open path plus file name. And since we just want to read information from it, let's put the R like that. Then what we're going to do is do info is going to be equal to an integer, or actually info is going to equal file.readLine. So we're going to read the information from the file, and then we're going to have number is going to equal an integer version of info. After that, we are going to set the amount of points that we have to be equal to number. So I'll explain this in a second if you're kind of confused. I'll explain this towards the end, but it's not as complex as it sounds. Okay. What we now want to do is go towards the top of our script. And actually, let's define the scene really quick. So scene is going to equal bg.logic.gets current scene like this. And let's define our 1 and our 2 objects inside of our script. So 1 is going to be equal to scene.objects 1, and then 2 is going to be equal to scene.objects 2 like this. Okay. Now that we have that, let's go inside of our main function. And this is where it's going to be important. What we're going to do is right click back on our camera, and let's do mouse over is going to be equal to controller.sensors mouse over, and then click is going to be equal to controller.sensors click like this. And what we're going to do first is just have if mouse over dot positive. We're just going to print mouse over dot hit object. So if we go to our console, and actually let's add our script right here in our controller, but I'm going to go into my console like this. So let's open up your system console. And if we were to hit play now, actually wait, our mouse is not visible. That's my mistake. From BGE imports render dot show mouse and then 1. Okay. So what should happen is if I hit P now, if I hover over 1, it will say 1, and if I hover over 2, it'll say 2. That's what we want. Okay. Now, this may be a lot longer than normal, but bear with me now. Okay. What we now want to do is have it so that if we are hovering over an object and if we click the left mouse button, so if click.positive, what we're going to do is do, we're going to have if mouse over.hit object is equal to 1. What we're going to do is call the save function, or the load function, sorry. We're going to have load, and we're going to load player 1. So load player 1.txt like this. And if mouse over dot hit object is equal to 2, we're going to have load then player 2.txt. Okay. But remember now, we need to have a game property for our camera called own points. So that's required for our load function. So let's add an integer property. Let's call it points. And let's keep it at 0 for now, but let's hit this I and then do game and then show debug properties. So what should happen is when I hit P and I click, it's going to load 43. And if I click on 2, it's going to load 443. Click, 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 click. Okay, so that's how you load dynamically information for files in terms of, multiple players. And I'm now going to go over my script because I feel like this is probably more of a confusing one. Okay, so to start off with the script, just like normal, we got to get our information for just to be able to basically get our path open. Then right here, I made the mouse visible by importing the render and then doing render.showMouse. Define the current controller, define the current scene, define the owner, and define the 1 and 2 text objects like this. Then I define the load function, as well as file name, and file name is whatever we call right here at the bottom. Then whenever we call the load function, it's going to be an open path, and all we're going to do is read information from it, so that's all we have to do, make it readable. Information is going to be whatever information from the file. And let's have number is going to be, then we had number is going to equal an integer version of whatever is inside that file. Then we set our own points to be equal to the number. Inside of our main function, we defined our mouse over sensors and our click sensors. Then we had if our mouse was over an object, we're going to print that object to the console. And if we click and the mouse is over the object called 1, it's going to load information from project 1 or file 1. And if our mouse was over the object named 2, it was going to load the information from player 2. So that's how this works. Okay guys, I hope you found this useful.